when you talk about sex, there are a lot of layers. This slide might be a little bit confusing, but I'm building on the idea that there isn't just this biological drive that's at play when you want to have sex. There are also variables that influence this on many different dimensions. So at any given point on any day, you have sort of the container that you are living in, the environment. That's the context. So you and your partner are in a relationship, and your relationship is in a community, and your community is in a city, and your city is in a state. And there are all of these layers that inform us about how often we should be having sex, what kind of sex we should be having, whether or not two women should be having sex. There are lots of layers. So there's this big container, and the container has a lot of different layers. And so the context is that bigger container. What does society say about us having sex? The answer to that question is so different today than it would have been 30 years ago, 20 years ago. And that's just so crazy for me to think about. In 1973, the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders, removed homosexuality as a mental illness, as a mental disorder. And so when you think about things like that, when I think about things like that, I think that's so crazy. I was mentally ill. And then magically one day, when this new DSM came out, I was no longer mentally ill. And so all of this stuff is sort of made up. And it's these societal attitudes and the beliefs that we have in our family culture, all of the things, the media, religion, values. Some of you may find that to be a sensitive statement for me to say it's all made up, but literally it is all made up. At some point, somebody said, this is how to think. This is what we believe. This is what to do. It might have been your parents. It might have been your teacher. It might have been your neighbor. But somewhere along the way, you picked up a lot of different messages. And the combination of messages that each of you received is different. And so then you have all your messages and beliefs and values in this big container, and you bring that with you to your relationship, and you operate as if it's a universal sort of just thing, like everybody thinks this or feels this, because we tend to do that. And so there's the bigger backdrop. And I have definitely met and worked with people who literally make the decision to not have sex because they believe it is a sin and that they're going to go to hell. They can love this woman, but they can't have sex with her. So that's a big obstacle. That's a layer that's going to influence. And some of those influences are not even conscious. So a big part of this process involves really figuring out what is conscious and what isn't. The unconscious stuff has just as big of a hold as the conscious stuff does. And that's what makes that tricky. So then inside this container, we have our relationship, and we have our day-to-day interactions, and we have these moments after moment, after moment, after moment, where we're interacting. And some interactions are like, she say that hurt my feelings, or how come she asked me if I was really going to go outside wearing this, or how come she is telling me I shouldn't have a second serving of, I was going to say tacos, but that's probably not in good taste. A second serving of burritos. We start having these moments that we start feeling a certain way. And these are the specific situations that we're in. We also have moments where, wow, I worked 12 hours today. So my body's tired, my mind's tired. All I can think about is dinner and Netflix. I just want to relax. Those are specific details that actually have a big impact on our availability for intimacy and sex. All of that matters. But when we're in a relationship and we have a desire, or we don't have a desire, we often don't think about all of those pieces, and we sure don't talk about them because that's a lot of work. And most people don't have the skills to do that effectively. So, how you're feeling, what your energy level is, the level of stress that you have. It's not realistic for people to be readily available for sex all the time. And it's also a possibility that you can be ready for sex if you make different choices and decide you're going to be willing to have sex. And so there is an element among women that have disinterest in sex, but once they start having it, they think to themselves, oh, this isn't so bad after all. We should do this more often. And so it starts to feel good 5 or 10 minutes into starting to do it. But the idea of it beforehand feels like work, another thing to do. And there's a disconnect there. I'm not going to say that you have to feel desire to have sex. Willingness is sometimes all it takes. And that's okay.